Hello, hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, we have Apple. Welcome, guys. Now, in a meetup for digital twins. Hey, Joe. Welcome.
Hey, Demetrius. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Nice to hear. Let's wait for a few seconds for the rest of the people to join us. And uh, let me introduce what we gonna do today, guys. We mostly plan to talk about how we can import data in our graph database, which is the first step, but the most important one for building a digital twin. So we're waiting for the rest of the people to join us. And let us introduce for those who were joining for first time this meetup. I'm the Dimitris Boudis. I'm working in no-code, low-code tools most of the past years, and I joined the journey of building digital twins 3 months ago. I'm so excited for that, and I already started building my own case studies. And here is a very good friend, Mitch, who is a marketing expert guru with strong skills in the putting creativity in the process. Mitch, would you want to share more about you?
Yeah, sure. Everybody. Yeah, the background is in marketing, but uh, for about 10 years, I was uh, creating and publishing online courses, mostly in the personal development space and other people's content. So I was more behind the scenes. So I had a lot of opportunity to really extract the way experts think, what they do, their methods, etc. And got really heavy into app development, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. And, then heavily into the AI side of things. And the interest for me in the digital twin space was really about the mental model and thinking about how to capture and catalog the mental model specifically for the use of LLMs through GraphRag, which is the technique that Demetrius uses as well. And that is a very, very, very interesting process, in part because in my case, if I'm trying to model a mental model, it is a creative act, right? Our brains are black boxes, so we're doing our best to try and extract what we can without really understanding what we're doing. So yeah, that's my background.
One piece of your background, I would say, it doesn't show you the skills. I know you a few months now, and I really appreciate your skills and thinking very, very smart. And that's the cool thing on building the digital twins, because the twin has to be somehow an intelligent object, a digital one, but it has to have intelligence. So uh, I think we're ready to get started. Uh, so, as I said, the purpose of this meetup is to show you guys one approach for how we can import data into our graph database. So, in the first part of the session, I want to show you an approach, which is we're going to use Claude AI to analyze a transcript. I had prepared 2 transcripts already. And we're going to use the Neo4J MCP server. So we will not touch any weird thing that looks like coding. We will remain in the human experience with natural language to process our data and create the knowledge graph. So let me share my screen. And of course, during the presentation, feel free to ask your questions. Um, but all right. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yep.
All right. So what I already did was that I took the transcript from a conversation, an introductory call with a client. I work on Claude with that to hide or delete the sensitive data about it and run a workflow. We're going to run it in a minute to create the initial input in my knowledge graph, in a knowledge base. And so we've created this first knowledge graph. We see here the nodes, which are the objects. We have business, consultation session, who the person who are mentioned in this conversation. And we can see the relationship between the nodes. For each relationship, we see the arrows that show us the destination, how it works. And the purpose for using this knowledge graph is to fit it into the model so the model can easily understand the context of this input, which is the entire transcript, right? So before we get started, here is the analysis I did. First, I have prepared all these prompts for Claude to save some time. All right. The first thing is that I'm asking Claude to analyze and read very carefully the transcript and trying to figure out a couple of questions. Those questions are given by me, and these are critical for me because I'm building this knowledge base and I want this model to know specific information. For example, I ask him, what is the client's challenge? If he tried a loan already, if he already contacted another consultant, for example, he has a specific timeline to complete his project, and so on. These are totally adjustable. Everyone in your own case, you can adjust these questions. What matters to you, right? And let's go and do it. I'm going to copy this. And I will open my Claude. I started a new conversation. It's important to use the Claude desktop because later on in the same conversation, we're going to use the MCP server. For those who are not familiar with that, let me mention that here. MCP server is the model context protocol. It's a way where from the chat on an AI tool, we can communicate with another platform. And in this communication, we can run specific tasks like create an input, update the data, delete data, and so on. So I have already installed my Neo4J MCP server, my system, and here are the tools we have available. So I'm putting this here, and I'm gonna upload the file from the transcript. Purpose of adding this upfront into the conversation is because I want the AI into this conversation, analyze this conversation, tries to understand it before we go and input the data into our um, into our database. I'm looking here. It says, right. And also, as a human, I can read all these responses and I can see if he's doing something wrong, if he understands the concept, and so on. So I can go and correct him. It's perfect. So into the next step is I'm going to ask him to create the schema. Add some typos. So the AI, having already scanned the conversation and understood it, since it gave me a couple of responses to my questions, I'm asking him to go and create the schema. The schema is how we have to structure the nodes, the keys, and the relationships. So I'm going to get this information. And now he creates a newly created schema. As you will see, he's going to create new nodes. And ideally, we don't want to create nodes that are not in purpose. If we have already a person, we don't want to create human, for example. I will not focus on review these output. I will move to the next. I will accept it as 100% fine. But the thing is, from the chat, I can ask Claude to correct something. Anything that I disagree. The next question to Claude is, I'm asking him if we create this schema in our knowledge base, are you going to be able to respond those questions I gave you above? Because that's the goal. From this knowledge graph, any AI model should be able to give us the responses. What I found during my testing is that he wasn't able in few cases. So he just now runs the validation. Oops, we found already. So by itself, it improves the schema, the suggested schema. Yes, please. So he will give it once again into the chat. And again, I want to validate the output. So I'm going to ask him now if, thanks, Sally. Now, I want to ask him, if we use this schema, are we going to be able to answer these questions if we import transcripts for the same person from other 3 meetings with him? Because this has to be scalable. This question is mostly for the scalability of the purpose of what we're doing right now. And I'm looking into that. Again, we found something, a base for improvement. It's an opportunity for us to improve the schema. And we emphasize that much on this schema because, again, I repeat myself all the time. We talked about it last time too. That's the most important thing. So the model can give us the most accurate and consistent responses. Don't want him. Oh, yes, please. I want him to eat. And then I'm going to ask him to start creating stuff into my knowledge graph database. Today he's quite fast ahead, Faye. Perfect. I want to specify that now I want you to use your MCP tools. And the thing is, I want you to get the current schema. And I want him to compare the current schema with the schema he just created and find the differences and make the adjustments. So we will not create the same node multiple times. She creates the query, and this is the wonderful thing of MCP tool, guys. He structured the API call and he executes. There are already the credentials on the server. How I deployed that? I just followed the documentation where I just updated the config file into my Claude desktop. And from that way, I'm authenticated on my own account so I can start running all these actions. So now he recognized, for example, that the person and the client is the same object. Answering regressions, multi-mini progress analysis. Hacked. All right. You have done great job. Now, please put the data into my lens base using your MCP tools. So now he's going to use the most improved version of the schema. It already exists. This thing will take some time, but the interesting thing is to see these updates live. Here they are. And if I refresh, we can track. Firstly, it adds the nodes. So we will see this number to be increased. It was 25, now it's turned to 27, if I take it correctly. And after that, he's going to create the keys and then the relationships. And with a zooming, we can see the nodes and relationships. Before the update is 100% completed, we cannot see the meaning of this input because we are missing the connections, we're missing information. Oh, here he was blocked. We had a failure. He's correcting. The nice thing is that when he does something wrong, if he does a mistake, he just updates himself and he tries again to execute the purpose. As soon as we are waiting, guys, for the completion of the task, do you have any questions, any comment, anything, feel free to open your mics and join the conversation. he's creating now the technical issues.
So, Demetrius, if I might ask,
Yes.
when this is kind of running, do you also sort of watch it over on Neo4j to sort of see the graph kind of come together in real time, or do you usually wait for things to come together because it doesn't make sense until the end, or how does that usually look for you?
Great question. First of all, for Chrome users, keep in your mind, guys, that sometimes if we have issues with the cache in the Chrome, the updates are not looking immediately. We have to refresh multiple times. So because it happened to me in a presentation last week, I prepared my Chrome for today's session. What what we see is that the live updates every few seconds when we refresh the button. Here we see the nodes that are created. Previously it was 27, now it is 34. And this will increase if we add more nodes. To show them into the graph, we have to wait for a while because it depends on the selection into the graph. Because when I click this asterisk here, it shows all the nodes from the base. Now, so we have all the available nodes. Previously, I had clicked it while it was less than 27. It was 25, 23 before we just started, right? And now by clicking this, it creates the relationships. But at the moment, we see only the relationships that I guess they were already existed from previously, because to be displayed the relationship of the graph, it has to be completed. And I see here that he still creates a node. Data fields are nodes in our, here it is, in our nodes base. So firstly, he creates all the nodes, then he imports property keys, and at the end, he creates the relationships. So during the process, what we can see that, okay, it works. Like right now, it went to 46. But we cannot see it actually on the graph. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
They take some time here, so I think I can let it running. And if there are no questions to me at the moment, anything to discuss, I think we can streets few minutes and see his presentation. And at the end, we could, oh, yes, please.
I was just gonna say, but before we switch to Mitch, I had a quick question because you're mentioning that it sort of continues to run. One is, how long have you found this sort of stuff usually takes to run? I appreciate it depends, but like, are there inputs or like a rough order of magnitude? It's like more than 5 minutes, more than half an hour, that kind of thing. And second, do you find that you need to babysit to give approvals, or it'll just kind of run without you once you got the thing rolling?
Very good points. The time to complete, it depends on the volume of the data we have. The transcript I used, it was 1.5 hour session, so it will take some time. The previous one, it was 1 hour, and it took me 10, 11 minutes completed. So I expect not more than 15 minutes to be completed. And most of the nodes were already existed. So this is somehow the average time. Now, regarding the second part, Would you mind to remind us again the second part? Sorry, because I get confused from the notifications.
Yeah, sure. Do you have to babysit it? Like you were talking about like handing this off to Mitch. I'm sort of wondering, like, if you were to leave it alone for like half an hour, is it just for going to be, good to fly on its own, or do you sort of need to keep tabs on it because it occasionally asks you for approvals, or?
He's creating the relationships. Usually MCP use it on a Claude and on ChatGPT before it executes the query. It shows a pop-up asking for our permission to run this specific query or give permission to run all the time. Because I was playing all the time, guys, and preparing my examples here, I gave him permissions to run all the time without asking any permissions. The thing is, from my perspective, I would suggest to not do it when you're doing in an actual project, because I want to see the query before it being executed. However, if you don't want to be right in the conversation and do this babysitting, let's say, what I would do is I would ask in a message before to describe me the nodes and the relationships he's planning to create. So he will give me somehow this weird thing, which is not human understandable, in a more descriptive way. So if he gives that, I expect in 98% at least, he's gonna do exactly this query afterwards. So I can give the permissions and leave my chair or switch my window to another tab.
Super cool. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Demetrius,
Yes. Hey.
just because this is my current bugbear in Claude, have you? I'm guessing it's quite lightweight in terms of the actual information you're sharing and fetching the structure of the databases that exist. But have you run into any context window issues trying to develop or update these as they get larger?
Very often, but it happens. It happens. It happened to me previously when I fitted the original transcript and asked to do the replacements because the transcript was too huge, it was broken, and he gave me the option to put continue, so he just continued right after when he was stopped.
Okay, so the chat itself didn't like X out because it was too long. It was the response time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, I remember that thing back in April when I firstly started playing with MCP servers. It was quite annoying, this thing, because it was stopping all the operation in the middle of the conversation. And then we couldn't continue in the chat saying, hey, can you continue from when we were stopped? He didn't know that. But also Claude, I think yesterday I received an email that Claude now has a memory for our conversations. Maybe this is also an extra thing that can be used to improve our experience when using Claude.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Now I have a different nodes graph. And oh, we are done. So I can complete my side before we switch with Mitch. One way to validate on our side if what we just created was efficient and makes sense, it includes all the important information we want to include, is that we can go back and get any random of those questions, or we can think a question about, and we can ask him into Claude this question saying that please go into this knowledge base and find the relative response and let me know. So, and then these questions are quite easy to be answered. I would suggest to ask more complex questions to see if he got confused. So because it may happen that in the first session we said, okay, we're gonna move forward with Zapier. And the second one, for any reason, we decided to switch from Zapier to any other platform, for example. So we need to know this switching. This is important. Otherwise, we're not achieving the main goal of this purpose. I will not run this example right now. I think we're trying to start with Mitch, and if we have time at the end of the conversation, I'm very glad to do it again and put the questions in the chat right here. It
Right. So let's go through this. I want to start at a high level. And in part, this is thinking about the use case for me. My approach here is using it in a production context. So whether that's powering an actual chat bot, but a lot of my interest right now is how to use it basically as a business logic layer to apps, which is tricky, especially when it comes to timing. But to understand from a top level, I think is important because these prompts, when we're relying on, and I use Claude as well, I recommend it more than the others. It's helpful to sort of understand the way that you are trying to get it to design something for it, right? So all of the prompts that I've used, et cetera, have been created by Claude. But the big difference is that because we're dealing with mental models that are ostensibly creative, this is not structured data. This is not something that can be expressed simply. So we're trying to sort of do something mysterious, I guess you could say. So, the first thing is, understanding from a top level why we're thinking about this from a graph database standpoint. And it's looking at, we're not importing knowledge. We're trying to, the real key is the relationships. And so that is all about these sort of the living system that is powering all of this. So, one of the things when you're dealing with a mental model is, it's not a one size fits all. So, for example, if you do extract principles, strategies, and tactics, that's something that might be appropriate for a certain type of expert, but not another. So, a jazz musician doesn't have strategies, that motifs, tension points, resolution patterns, things like that. So the framework is to think about this as you are using the expert's own concepts, their own language in order to extract all of this. And for me, I've done this. I mean, you can use things that they've written and books or audios or videos or whatever, but I use basically a series of interviews that are designed to get to the heart of how they think, and even in ways that they're not aware of. So, the way that I think about it is basically the different kinds of knowing or identities that someone uses when they are approaching the world around them, when they're applying their expertise using their mental model. So, pretty straightforward. The analytical, the creative, embodied, relations. These are all just different types of relationships ultimately that are defining both the nodes and ultimately what the relationships are coming from that. The other thing to keep in mind is that the we're always looking at this through the lens of a language model, right? So we're using GraphRag as the interface between the graph database and the language model. There are peculiarities and constraints that involves, but also it's really understanding what's happening when a language model goes off and uses GraphRag in order to extract and search the database. So the GraphRag approach, the relationship itself and the metadata associated with it is really, really critical. And we want to think about building relationships as the more detail that you can give it, the easier it will know whether it should go down that path or not. So when you're designing a GraphRag system, you give it parameters on how many nodes it can go down, and all that kind of stuff. You can let it run wild, it just takes longer and eats up more tokens. But ultimately, we're trying to find this balance between the richness of what it's pulling and speed. So giving it really diverse and thick relationship understanding enables it to choose what paths it's going to go down and not waste time. So the way that we do this is looking at this is the metadata that we're extracting. So the mechanisms and how that relationship works. The confidence is basically how it's the analysis of how strong that relationship actually is. And the traversal rate is similar. It's within the context, it's basically a score that tells how far and where to go from there. And then the active context, which is basically saying, when should you consider going down this path? So if someone is asking about a broad question, maybe it's much more open, but if they're looking for a specific problem, does the context relate to the problem that they have? And then the reasoning type. So the GraphRag is most effective when knowledge can be approached in multiple ways, right? So GraphRag always starts with a semantic search, but that semantic search is also based on what it is identifying as the need of the user. So these are just some examples. For the activation cascade is basically the open-ended exploration. It's exploring those high energy nodes, which are basically the nodes that are most relevant to the semantic search, and then going along whichever relationships things are scored better. And for specific situations, it uses context. The nuance topics, it's looking for contradictions, the thesis antithesis pairs and how they combine. For the evolution of expertise, you're looking at traversal over time and how things have evolved. And then for those creative insights, that emerging discovery is basically looking for unexpected connections, because frankly, language models can do quite a good job at trying to piece sort of disparate information or collections of information together into something. So this is when you're creating the actual the structure of the nodes, you give it the semantic identity. So, and this is basically for the vector search itself. And then you're giving it the structural identity. So like the centrality score is basically how relevant is it to the whole mental model as a course. So it can find something from a vector search, but if the centrality score is saying, oh, it's sort of an edge case, then it might say, okay, I'm not going to go down this path. And then the context is really giving it, it's like an instruction on when to say, okay, this is what I want to use. And so it gives this sort of more robust understanding of what it's looking at. And so when we're looking at, you might think that it is about the more nodes you have, the more information, the better. But in this case, it's really about the density of the relationships. So, instead of thinking about it as a tree, you're thinking about as many relative, or valuable relationships as you can, so that you're giving the model the best chance of being able to find those connection, but also those unique connections, right? In so many ways, we are taking a mental model that is the way one person thinks, but that one person was within their own context, their own story, their own experience, their own knowledge, etc. But then we're trying to use that for someone else in a completely different context. So focusing on these relationships and extracting the knowledge so it's not isolated is basically the theory, is that that's how you get it closer to being able to adapt the mental model to someone else. And this is just giving basically what I was saying. So the multiple reasoning paths, it allows someone or the model to run down a different path if that didn't get it what it wants. The graceful degradation, sort of similar. If it's works better in another path, it's gonna, ignore what it just tried. And then those non-obvious connections, which for me is particularly important. And then just the richer context. And then this is just, I don't have actually too much time. I'm gonna have to jump off quick. So I think I actually can stop here. And before I show you the actual system prompts, does anybody have any questions?
I have a question, Mitch. Um, Previously, you mentioned about the score for counting the relationship, like how much those two nodes are related. This is my understanding, right?
Correct.
The first thing is how this score can be calculated.
So this is everything is done by the models. And that's why the system prompts are so important. I am not babysitting this to a tremendous degree. The most babysitting I'll do is ask it to check its work. But beyond that, it's the idea that the models understand themselves better than we do. So it's giving them permission, in a sense, to say, based on what you're reading, what is going to be the most effective way for you to use this information?
They has a question. My big question is about connecting these concepts to the prompt to do the work. So I am edge of seat to see the next screen. Exactly that.
So I think this. So let's see. Okay, so I'll get into this later. The first step is really the schema extraction. So this is my system prompt. And what I have is, and I'll go through it, but I have this set up in Claude. So it's doing this programmatically is something that can be done, but I actually have this set up so all the stages of the extraction process are their own specific Claude project. And that's so that I can have the system prompt. All I do is upload what it needs, and then it goes. So starting with the first step is this initial prompt. Some sort of baseline, best practices for this kind of prompting. One, it is in Markdown format, and Markdown, even just with the hierarchy of the way the headlines are designed, so one £sign versus two, but always starting with giving it an identity, right? And then this defines obviously the core mission, and putting that core mission up front is really important, just so that everything else that it reads after that is within that context. So then we're giving it sort of the critical graph rag design. What are we really looking to accomplish and why? And it's you'll see it a lot. It's always giving examples. And then into this extraction process, the challenge is I wanted to develop a prompt that didn't care about the type of expert. So this point of it is trying to understand who the expert is, how do they do what they do, etc. And this prompt is uploaded with this prompt is the transcript or the content, so my interviews, and it's using that to extract all of this information. And as you see, there are phases, and that's because models now can think in this sort of looped fashion. So we don't have to think about it like, here's the single prompt, and it's going to do everything in one go. It can have this recursive process. So it's starting with, and this is all just about schema, right? So we're starting with what are the different kinds of nodes. And in here, it's giving the structure, the top-line structure of the nodes. So some of the things you're seeing, the activation threshold and what else, the centrality score, et cetera. That's all given in a schema that it then uses as it continues. So, it gives these three core points: the semantically rich, the traversable, and the contextual. And then this is the schema for the relationships themselves. And so in some ways, we're really trying to we're trying to codify as much as we can into this strict form so that the creativity, so to speak, of the model can be focused more on the extraction of, the relevant parts and not trying to figure out how to structure it. So, this is just, again, giving examples and, for this multi-strategy retrieval design. In other words, what we were talking about in terms of, well, what's the intention of the model being queried? Different in a chat context versus, a business logic, whatever it might be. And then it's just giving indexing. And then this is getting into, right, based on domain type, emphasize different graph rags features. So, and there's something, just in all transparency, there's so much about this, and graph rag included, that I am still learning about. So much of this obviously was written by a language model. And so much of the nuance here I am still learning about. And I've still gotten good results. So you don't have to be an expert to get all this out. So we're going through there. And then we're giving it basically a way for it to check its work. So it's, and then the output, right? So this output is, again, it's the output of this, and I'll show you. Well, let's just get to the bottom. The output, it gives it how to design the cipher, and then giving it what it must do, and then giving it the permission to begin. So the output, let's see. So this is the output for this, right? So you can't read it because it's cipher, but it actually did give sort of its overall analysis of it. What I didn't do in this context that I would do is to ask it to do it again, to check its work. The one thing to say about this, and this is where it really highlights that this is not about precision, but it's much more about flexibility and creativity, is that every single time you run this prompt with the same transcript, you will get a very different output. So one approach is to run this multiple times, not having it check its work. So basically starting a new chat, which I did, and then I actually use ChatGPT in this case to analyze the difference, right? Same transcript, same system prompt. And for some reason, it decided that in this one, that guy was more about the creator economy. No idea why. So if you do this multiple times, however, crazy you want to be about it, ultimately that gives you a whole bunch of cipher for the schema that you can then upload into a new chat and say, here's the transcript, here are all these variations, what's the best? And then it has much more robust context. So then at that point, I don't think I'm really going to have time to show you all the stages specifically. But so I don't have a clean process. This is all stuff that for me, the next step is really trying to code into a workflow so I can just upload and have a lot of this happen. Right now, it's all very manual. But the first model output schema in Cypher, which is basically the SQL version for Neo4j. But then we need to turn that into JSON, which is much more readable for the rest of these phases. So that's what this first step is it's just formalizing it into JSON. And then we're doing the extraction. And the extraction is, and this is a lesson that I learned the hard way, especially when you're dealing with a lot of context. And goes to your question, Ellie. If you have a lot of context, it's not just about whether the model has enough of a context window to process it, but it's also how good is the quality of the processing. So doing it in chunks, I think, even if it can handle more, tends to be better. So how do you manage that? Because the problem with that is, okay, you can extract nodes and relationships within those chunks, but what about all the other chunks you're doing? All of a sudden you have this gap. So the solution that I realized was to do the node extraction, but the relationships to do as stubs. So it's not building out the complete, all that context, that rich relational metadata. At the beginning, it is just simply noticing the relationships. You're doing that because it then has all of that context of the interview and the schema in one pass. And that sort of makes a big difference. So we do that, then we extract the chunks, and in that process, it's making the relationships. And then we basically consolidate all of the nodes into a single document. And it's basically a combination of building out the relationships, but first making sure that there are no duplicates, so it's deduping at the same time. And then ultimately, the output of all of this is just raw JSON, which you can upload into Neo4j. You don't have to convert it all to Cypher. And then this last phase here was solving the problem of, well, what happens when you want to add new context down the road? And so this takes, the registry, and the relationships, everything that you've done before, the schema, et cetera, and you combine that with the new source material, and then it can figure out what to do from there. And this is something that I have not used the Neo4j MCP for. To do this much more programmatically, that would be the way to do it. But for now, this is all very manual. And then, yeah, so unfortunately, I only have 5 minutes before I got to bounce, but are there any questions?
Could you speak a minute to like the manual process that you are using there at the end, and what you sort of see as like next steps, opportunities to maybe make it a little bit easier for yourself or for others?
Yeah, so the manual process is literally not copy and paste, but upload, download, upload. And that's what I was showing in all of those different Claude projects, those are all the different phases just articulated into system prompts. And I'm happy to share those, and then just reach out to me and I can share what those are. But the sort of the next step of that, I think that the actual schema generation is going to be a little tricky to do programmatically, unless it is reliable to have, let's say it creates 4 different schemas and you give it that final prompt saying, okay, here's the context again, here are the schemas, make the best schema as a result of all of that, and then to do the rest. But everything after that is all very is optimized for a sort of just a procedural workflow. It doesn't require any kind of oversight.
Super cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And can I just quickly ask? I don't mean to dominate that. Like the when you are looking at these prompts and so trying them like for different clients or different domains, do you find yourself sort of adapting the prompts based on what you see? Is there like is there a Mitch in the loop in addition to like giving the machines to be doing the refinement just based on the prompts as you already created them?
Yeah, I mean, there is looking at the node types and the relationships has been key, especially early on in the process, because the first time I ever did this, the relationships that I was designing were pretty weird. And I think that was just a matter of it thinking too abstractly and trying to go too large. So yeah, having obviously a grasp on the knowledge that you're trying to convert is key. But then beyond that, it is a matter of looking carefully and making sure that it actually resonates with what you know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
In terms of the outputs, have you got a way of testing how good they are? Is it gut feel? Is it the clients just looking at it going, yep, that's me, that's right?
It's been a combination. So far I've developed 2 of these. And one was with Dan, which was the example that I used, and that was very gratifying. He felt like he was talking to a smarter version of himself. Um, so uh, you know, that was a part of it. But then beyond that, I mean, it is all subjective. The nature of the mental model itself is subjective. So it really is sort of one, as the architect, does it feel right? Does it make sense logically, intuitively, whatever? But then beyond that, it's really about, are people getting the output, in the form of whatever you are powering with, the graph rag connection, is it actually doing the job?
Mm. Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
One last question I'm really curious about, Mitch. About the calculations but the model has to decide about the level of the relationship to give their spouse to what extent means is that good in that thing and so on. How the weights are coming? The model makes the decision, or you guys how to weight it?
No, that is totally up to the model. And the reason to do that is you are giving, you are designing this for the model you are using to extract the information. So in essence, if you're saying you are extracting this so that you can use it within a graph rag context, it's going to have the context of the information that it's, designing this all from, and saying, okay, if I was in a context and I was using graph rag, how would I get the best response? One of the things that you did that I think is fantastic that I will be modeling is giving it questions up front to use as ways to test it. I think that's brilliant. So that would be another way to do it, to really give it more of a structure to weighting it. But otherwise, I leave it up to the model.
It's nice that you have a subjective number, so we can either compare it, because the numbers are comparable. Text is not.
No.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Right. We're at the end of the hour, guys. If anybody else has a last question, feel free to open your mics or put it on the chat.
Fortunately, though, I need to run. I got to jump on another call, but thank you, everybody. And thank you, DFMRE.
We're gonna run it again. You will receive notifications on emails. Thanks for joining today. And we continue learning in the digital twins. Thanks all.
Thank you very much.